everyone. Welcome to Around Town. I'm Barb Wysocki. My guests this evening are Mr. Joe Moore, who is Manager of Emergency Programs of the Region of Peel, and Ms. Brenda Palmer, who is a call taker for 911. Welcome to the show. I understand this week kicks off the 911 Awareness Week. So what is the purpose of 911 Awareness Week?
That's true, Barb. Even though 911's been with us since 1988, we're still finding there's a lot of people out there that have some misconceptions, maybe aren't sure when it's appropriate to call it, and probably 6 out of every 10 people that call 911 aren't calling for valid emergencies. So we'd like to do a number of things this week. One is to call some attention to that and to try and increase the public's awareness. And as well, we'd like to highlight our call takers, people like Brenda here who do such a great job all year, and pay a little tribute to the excellent work they do.
What sort of activities are happening this week on 911 Awareness Week?
We've just completed an open house, which was the first ever for us with 911 on Sunday at Peel Regional Police Headquarters. We gave the public the opportunity to go in and have a look at the Central Answering Bureau, see how 911 calls are taken and processed, how the system works, and also we had some police, fire, and ambulance vehicles out there for the kids. That's always a popular item. And Monday afternoon we presented Brenda with the Call Taker of the Year Award on behalf of the Region of Peel for her exemplary performance of her duties this year. And during the last week and including, or continuing rather on to the end of this week, we've got a number of outreach programs in schools, with service clubs. We're going around making speaking engagements and that sort of thing to try and increase the public's awareness of the 911 system.
Do you have any exhibits in different shopping centers set up?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we've got 2. We've got one in Mississauga this Friday and Saturday, and we have one at the Brampton City Center for those here in Brampton. It's going to be running all day Friday and all day Saturday and Friday evening as well. They'll have the opportunity to meet with our call takers, pick up a brochure, coloring sheets for the kids, fridge magnets, and more importantly, learn about how the system works.
Exactly. Also, I'm sorry, I'm reaching a blank here. I have so many questions on my mind. What happens when a person dials 911?
When you place a 911 call via a normal telephone rather than cellular, where the process is a little different, your call travels along a dedicated 911 trunk. It's a Bell telephone line. Until it interfaces with a computer located at the Central Answering Bureau. That computer picks up some very important data. It picks up the telephone number you're calling from, the name and address of the person who pays the telephone bill, most importantly the address the call is being made from. That permits Brenda, when her and her colleagues answer the telephone, to instantly identify, in almost all cases, the location of the caller, and that's important, particularly in instances where, say, we had someone who was choking or otherwise unable to speak. We at least know there's a problem going on at that address. The call will be answered by one of our call takers, who then prompts the caller as to what's the nature of their emergency, which service do they want, police, fire, or ambulance. And when that's been identified, the call taker then conferences the call through to the appropriate emergency agency who are responsible for dispatching the resources to deal with the incident.
What happens if a person doesn't speak English?
That's something we're particularly concerned about in light of the composition of our region, which, as you're aware, is particularly cosmopolitan. We have a number of people speaking different languages, and we want to make sure that nobody's left out of the loop. So we've contracted the services of ATT in the United States. They provide an online translation service. So in the event that one of our call takers can't communicate, can't discern the essential information about what's going on or what the nature of the problem is, they can have a translator on the line, usually within a minute or so, and that translator is going to be able to distill the critical information that's going to permit us to get the emergency resources out.
And how many calls do you get per night or even per year?
Well, Brenda could probably speak to how many she gets per night, and I guess that varies quite a bit, but I know that we keep statistics on an annual basis, and this year we expect to handle over 120,000 calls at the Central Answering Bureau. That's down a little bit. Perhaps some of the outreach has been working, because the previous 2 years we processed about 133,000 calls in each year.
Wow, that's a phenomenal amount. And how many of those are non-emergency calls? What was it, 60%?
About 60%, yeah, that's
are
what
non-emergency.
statistics show. Yeah.
And what would qualify as a non-emergency calls? What type of calls would you get that are non-emergency?
Well, I guess there's a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's willful misuse of the system. You know, kids are playing
Right.
games with the phone, prank calls, that sort of thing. Sometimes people program 911 into the auto dial feature of their telephone, which we wish they wouldn't do because there's really no significant time advantage to doing it. There's not much time difference between dialing 1, say, and 911. What happens, though, is if kids pick up the phone and play with it, or you're even cleaning the telephone, or you forget which number you programmed in, all those things can trigger a 911 call. And, you know, then we have those people that think that 911 is a shortcut, let's say, to the police. You know, they'll call up, they can't be bothered to look up the 7-digit number, they're not aware of it, think, well, we'll call 911. You know, we know that's over at police headquarters, and they may want to know how to pay a parking ticket or how to go about getting a firearms acquisition certificate, any one of those things, or what's the weather. You know, there's a lot of reasons why people do it. The message we'd like to stress, the core message, I guess, as to when to use 911 is, of course, for police, fire, ambulance assistance. If there's a fire that you're aware of, or you see or smell smoke where there shouldn't be any, if someone suffered a serious medical emergency, and we're very careful on that one because I certainly don't want anyone out there who's not quite sure, but they're not feeling all that well, to not call us. And it turns out they really need assistance. So by all means, err on the side of caution. But as a general rule of thumb, if you require the immediate intervention of trained medical personnel for an emergency, then it's appropriate to call 911. And then, of course, for the police side, any incident of violence or criminal activity that's ongoing is a valid reason for calling 911. The example I usually use is if you come home from, say, a week's vacation and you find that sometime during your absence someone's broken into the garage and something's missing, but they've long since gone, well, don't call 911, call the police. They'll take a report and they'll process your complaint. However, if you're at home in bed one night and you hear someone trying to break into your garage, then by all means, please call 911.
911. Brenda, just to break a little from you, Joe, here. Brenda, how many calls do you get per night? You were saying that it's seasonal?
It's hard to give you an exact number per
Right.
night. A lot of it varies with the seasons. We find that during spring and summer, especially when the kids start getting out of school, the calls seem to pick up a lot more during the summertime. And then once they go back into school, they start to die down a little bit more during the fall and winter times, and then it will start to pick up again. So it's hard to give you an exact
Right.
number on.
And how long have you been a call taker with 911?
I've been a call taker for 7 years with Hill Regional Police.
And what types of calls do you get? Which does a certain call stand out in your mind the most?
Well, the one that stands out the most is the one that I received the award for, and that was an attempt suicide call where I had to keep the lady on the phone until we could get the police to where she lives and to the area and get the proper help to her.
How did you get interested in becoming a 911 call taker?
Well, it started, actually, I've been with Peel Police for 18 years, and I was in the Records Bureau, and an opening came up in communications. And from sitting in, because we had the opportunity to go in and listen in on the calls, it seemed very challenging. So I thought, wow, it's something I think I would like to try my hand at. So I went in and applied for a position and ended up getting it. And then they put me through a training course, which lasts for about 3 months, with it taking actual live calls with another person with you, and they're helping you along to make sure that you're asking the proper kinds of questions and stuff until you finally get on your own.
What type of schooling do you need to become a 911 call taker? Is there a specific course that you have to take?
Not a specific. We ask for a high school education, and then also if you get into your police science courses through community college or through the university, those are also beneficial for you as well.
What is the most, have you ever come across a situation in which you couldn't deal with the person on the line, which you needed maybe outside help from another call taker? Has there ever been an instance?
There has. You can ask another call taker beside you. They have an outlet in the telephone where they can also plug in and listen to you, or you can ask your supervisor who's there to pick up on the call as well, to monitor, to see if they can give you assistance in helping get the call processed.
Now, I'm sure this must be a very stressful job. How do you cope? How do you handle the calls?
You just seem to deal with it one call at a time. You concentrate just on that one person, ensuring that you get them the proper help that they need. And then once it's over and done with, you sort of have to sit back and take a breath and think, okay, they're okay, I'm okay, let's deal with the next one, and on you go.
That's amazing. You're brave. I don't know if I could cope with all this crisis, because you are dealing with crises, you know, every night. Joe, how long, no, I'm sorry, not how long, but how many years has this program, the 911 Awareness Week, been going on? Is this the first year? Or?
It's our second year, actually. We decided to undertake it last year at one of the meetings of our advisory committee. We have a technical advisory committee where we meet with representatives from all of the services associated with 911, police, fire, ambulance, and Bell. And the common problem that we addressed, of course, was the continuing misuse of the system. So we thought that a program that would focus on public education and also highlighting the type of problems that are faced by our call takers. That's quite often we talk about the cost of it. We say, well, no, the first cost definitely of misuse of the system is the risk that's imposed. When someone is genuinely in need of assistance, if the lines are tied up, I mean, there are a limited number of 911 trunks. We've never had a real problem because, 911 is never busy. You certainly get put on hold, but you're given a recorded message. But when that occurs, strobe lights start flashing in the comm bureau, and anyone who's not performing an immediate emergency call will come over and take it. So that's the primary risk that's associated with it. And of course, there's the dollar value cost as well, because we have to staff appropriately to receive a volume of 130,000 calls per year. But the other cost is the cost it imposes on people like Brenda. It just makes their job that much harder. They've got a difficult enough task as it is dealing with real emergencies. And that's compounded by people calling in for all sorts of non-emergent reasons. That's not really fair to them. And that's another very real reason why we want to continue to undertake that until it starts to sink in.
Great job. I wish you both much success, and I hope the 911 Awareness Week does work out well and it continues to be an ongoing thing for both of you. 911 Awareness Week this week. If you are in Bramalea City Centre, do check out the exhibits, and I'll be back after this short break.
We're not so far apart, after all. A small reminder from USC Canada, 56 Park Street, Ottawa.
What do you do when you get angry at your child?
On family matters, we argue with our TV kids just like you probably do in real life.
But you don't have a script to tell you what to do.
So when the arguments don't stop, you might lose your temper and lay down the law because you don't know what else to do.
When you hit your boiling point, stop and remind yourself to listen. Unless you try to understand what your child has to say, you'll never know if he or she has a valid point.
It takes both of you to make your family work, and your family matters.
50 cents a week for a year buys a kid a week off the street and a free shot at a better life. One way you can help the most. The United Way.
You're watching Rogers Community 10, Brampton.
Welcome back to Around Town. Joining me now is Mr. Tim McClement, who is the Executive Director of the Region of Peel HIV/AIDS Network, and Mr. Ron Lorette, who is the Chairperson for the Walk for AIDS Committee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ron, October 1st, very special event. Can you tell us what will be happening on that day?
Well, on October 1st, here in Peel, we'll be having our first AIDS walk. We're trying to raise some awareness about HIV and AIDS in Peel, and also raise the awareness of our the Peel HIV/AIDS Network. And it starts at registrations at 10:30. The walk begins at 12:30. The opening ceremonies begins at 11:30. And after the 10-kilometer walk, we'll be having a lot of festivities back at the City Hall in Brampton, which is at Main and Queen.
And it starts at the Brampton City Hall,
Yes.
correct, on Wellington?
Right. It begins and ends there.
And how many people are you projecting will come to the walk?
We're expecting between 700 and 1,000, but we're hopeful that we'll get more.
And this is the first year that Brampton is hosting the Walk for AIDS?
Correct. It's been going on in Toronto for about the past 5 or 6 years, and there's now a new national campaign. There's about 41 centers across the country which will be walking on that day, and we're one of the community centers that will be doing it.
Do you feel that there's going to be competition for the Toronto Walk? Do you think people may go more towards Toronto, or?
Sure, because Toronto has been there for about 5 years, like I said, and they've established themselves. There's also a lot of people that don't understand the fact that that HIV and AIDS does exist here in Peel, and that by going to Toronto, they're actually not supporting their own communities.
Are you funded or sponsored for the walk at all?
Yes, we have some core sponsors. We have Caremark Pharmacy, we have Glaxo Wellcome, we have Hoffman Roche, and those are our big sponsors.
What about if I would like to participate in the walk, and I know a lot of my friends will not give me pledges. Can I still participate in the walk? Can I give a donation, or?
Yes, currently in Toronto, I think they figure that the majority of their walkers actually do not register any kind of sponsors. That way they do go in their walk and they give support physically and make donations, and you'll be able to do that as well. We have a couple of draws and stuff. One ticket is, we have 2 tickets to Beauty and the Beast plus dinner at Duncan Street Grill, and what that will be is $2 for a ticket or 3 for $5, and all proceeds will go to the Peel Into the AIDS Network.
And you're saying this is a 10-kilometer walk?
Correct.
And are there any rest stations along the way?
Yes, there are. We have 2 locations. One is at the Rosalie Arena. The other one is at McMurtry Pool.
What sort of groups of people are coming? Do you have any youth delegates or church organizations that will participate in the walk that you know of?
Sure. We have a big youth delegate, actually, that's really affiliated with our walk committee, spearheaded by a group of teens that are now going to university but come from one of the local schools in Mississauga. And we have a church that's really affiliated with us, and that's St. Joseph of Nazareth Church. Reverend John Wilton is their minister.
Wow, that's terrific. I wish you much success on the walk. I hope it'll be wonderful and that many more will come.
Sure.
Tim, what services do the HIV/AIDS Network provide for people?
The Peel HIV/AIDS Network provides support and education services to people who are living with HIV and AIDS, people who are affected, and the community at large. And those examples of those are things like in our support services, we provide one-to-one counseling, referrals to support groups, care teams for people who are sick in the home, and practical support for people who just need some day-to-day assistance with their daily living. Our education programs include things like a resource library that people can come in and use during the day anytime when we're open, and it contains a lot of information on HIV and AIDS.
Do you go around to high schools?
Yes, we do. That's another one of our education programs. We have a volunteer speakers bureau that's made up of trained volunteers from the community, and they go around to school groups, to community groups, to any group basically that requests a presentation on any aspect of HIV and AIDS. And some of those members of that speakers bureau are people actually living with HIV and AIDS.
Does Brampton have a hospice?
No, Brampton, there's no hospice anywhere in Peel region actually. In a fixed site. Hospice of Peel, of course, has community hospice programs for people, and Hospice Caledon as well. The only hospice that's freestanding, located in a building, is Casey House in Toronto.
In Toronto, yes.
That's the only hospice. But I think through our services and through services like Hospice of Peel and Caledon, we can provide community-based hospice services to people in the terminal phase of AIDS. That's only one aspect of the condition that we are involved with, because we're involved with everything from prevention before someone's actually HIV infected to right through to many years of living with HIV infection. And that's another program that we've just started as well too, called Healthy Alternatives. And that's a health management program for people living with HIV, because they can learn a lot of different ways of how to maintain and improve their health actually while they're living with HIV, because it is actually more and more becoming like a chronic illness, still perhaps ultimately fatal, not necessarily so. So we have that program as well now available to people. And it includes both medical and non-medical types of treatments, complementary therapies, and that kind of thing.
When you go into the high schools to speak, what are the responses like from the students? Are they receptive, or do they ask a lot of questions? Are they curious?
Generally they're receptive. I think in a lot of cases they've already had a lot of AIDS education. So what our challenge is to try to make it fresh and new for them and interesting, so that they get a better grasp of what it actually entails. And one of the best ways of doing that is to actually send someone who's living with HIV into their classroom, and they get a sense of looking at somebody saying, okay, that person is HIV infected. That person could easily be me when I grow up to be a few years older, or right now I could be infected and not know about it for several years, and then I'll test positive. So bringing it closer to them, into their community, of someone who actually lives in their community, brings it in much more relevant to them, rather than the idea that, oh, it affects people outside this community in downtown Toronto, or certain groups of people, or it doesn't affect me. So bringing that kind of a person in really helps to drive home that message to them.
And volunteer work, is there openings for volunteers? Do you have volunteers now working?
And we have a volunteer base of about 70 right now. We started off with about a dozen a year ago, and we've increased that by quite a bit since that time. We have volunteers working in every aspect of the organization, excuse me, both administratively, in fundraising, and then in support and education as well, too. So volunteers can contribute to the agency in a lot of different aspects, and all they have to do is phone during the day and find out how they can come in and find out more about volunteering.
And what sort of things do they do?
Okay, the examples are related to the programs I mentioned. For example, people can actually facilitate a support group for either people living with HIV or affected by HIV. They will drive people to appointments if they need it, both in Peel Region or downtown Toronto. They can help them in the home if they need some assistance with moving furniture or a lot of cleaning, that kind of thing. And then if they're in the stage where they are quite critically ill and they're getting other community health services, then we can provide a volunteer care team to go in as well and provide caregiver relief to the persons involved in the care, as well as companion to the person itself. Also, we provide a volunteer buddy program to people who want companionship and friendship, who may be already rather isolated and don't have any support, so the buddy then becomes their chief source of support.
And what are you looking for in a volunteer? What sort of qualifications should they have?
Basically, they don't have to have any specific level of education or healthcare training. They simply have to have a desire to become involved with the organization, to be open-minded, to learn a lot about HIV and AIDS and what people who are infected with HIV and AIDS go through. They have to have a non-judgmental attitude. They have to be prepared to look at themselves and look at what they can contribute and what does the agency really need at this point, and really ask themselves, why are they volunteering? What can they contribute to their community, rather than what can I gain from it myself, which obviously they will gain some skills while they are volunteering with us, that's true. But they have to really look at what they can contribute as well to their own community and what they might learn from that.
How long has the HIV/AIDS network been going on in Peel, in the region of Peel?
The Peel HIV/AIDS network has been established since 1991. And between 1991 and 94, the organization was rather small and was in a developmental phase with other health and social service agencies. But they were successful in getting funding to start actually providing direct services in support and education, which we've been doing since 1994. So.
I'm curious about the walk. Why was Brampton chosen to be, because obviously the region of Peel, it extends quite largely, does it not? When we think of region of Peel, I constantly think Brampton, Mississauga, but it's certainly that much bigger. What made you decide on Brampton?
Well, actually, we had a few different area sites that we had picked out, and we looked along and thought about what was the most scenic, what was most visual, and where could we get a lot of support. Also, it was most central. We knew people from Mississauga could probably get up to here. We knew people from Caledon could get down to here. So we figured that Brampton was the best location for this year. Next year, we do plan on moving it to Mississauga, however, and we might rotate it around a bit from there.
There won't be one at the same time between Brampton and Mississauga?
Well,
Would that be too much of a competition?
Ideally, that would be nice, like once we get rolling with it and it becomes an annual event, if we had enough volunteer base and community support to actually have simultaneous walks in the region. Right. That would be ideal, Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon.
Are you projecting a certain dollar figure already in your heads? Are you hoping for a certain dollar figure from the walk?
I myself haven't really thought about that too much. We were supposed to, but we didn't.
Because of course all this will go for the programming.
Yes,
for the
exactly.
And the more you get, obviously, the more you can.
Sure. I think for this year, we did what normally takes a year. We did it all in 4 months. Unfortunately for us, it meant a lot of work. And so we really didn't look at that part of it. We were looking at what the positives were. One, getting it out to the public. That was the fact that there was indeed an agency around for people, infected and affected. Also the fact that we were going to create some awareness about HIV and AIDS in Peel, the fact that it exists.
Right. Well, I wish you both great success. And everybody, October 1st, Walk for AIDS, and it is the beginning of the AIDS Awareness Week. If you'd like more information on volunteer services, the number is 905-890-8770. So please come out and support a very worthwhile cause. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Joe Moore and Ms. Brenda Palmer from 911 Emergency Services, who were here earlier on. And I'd like to give you their phone number if you wish more information on 911. The number is 791-7800. and it's extension 4730. Thank you, everyone, for joining me tonight. I'm Barbara Isaki, and I'll see you next week again on Around Town. Good night.
Around Town's original music is created by Burke Carroll of Palmer Advertising.
On the preceding program, please call the response line 24 hours a day at 456-0860. Your comments are appreciated. City Magazine volunteers are bringing you reports on crime and local events.